Hey everybody, today we are debating whether or not Old Testament figures lived to be as old as 900 years old, and we are starting right now. Hey everybody, thrilled to have you here for this especially interesting debate, one that we've never had before, that's for sure. Today we are debating whether or not Old Testament prophets or figures lived to be as old as 900 years old. So, having a little bit of Streamlabs delay, but don't worry, we're going to get through this. Want to introduce our speakers who are linked in the description. So if you're like, Raw Matt, I like that. Well, you can find his link as he is, you could say, you could say a colleague of Standing for Truths. They are working at the same channel. And Nick Lamar, we are thrilled to have you here. He has his link in the description for his Twitter, and I'm actually going to put your blog or webpage in there as well. It just crossed my mind. So, one thing I want to mention really quick, as we are very excited for this provocative and interesting debate that's coming up, is the provocateur, Kent Hovind, will be back. That's on July 19th. It's a Friday. He is going to be debating whether or not evolution is dangerous with Mr. Archaeopteryx. So we are very excited for that provocative debate, and we are also thrilled for introducing our co-moderator as well, who he, like I said, shares the same link as Raw Matt. That's in the description as well. Standing for Truth is co-modding today. Don't worry, as I know last time he was on, maybe he had a little bit too much coffee. It got pretty crazy. By the way, I got some feedback. Some people said, "Hey, the moderation, Standing for Truth he was like cats and dogs out there. We needed more moderation." I want to take responsibility for that. I'm sincerely sorry. I kind of threw Raw Matt. He was moderating. I threw him into this where when we have short time sections, it's really challenging to keep an eye on the live chat, plus the conversation, plus the timer. Raw Matt has got integrity. It was just that it's like so many things to do at once is a challenge. And so we appreciate Raw Matt moderating and Standing for Truth. You got to lay off the coffee, man. That was insane. Standing for Truth, we love having you here. We appreciate
especially that late at night. You can bet yourself going to be very neutral, unbiased today in my moderation. No whales and pine trees jokes, I promise.
Very nice. We appreciate that. And want to let you know, whether you are a creationist or atheist, Christian, Muslim, no matter where you stand, flat earthers, we are glad to have you here. We want you to feel welcome. We hope that we can build an eclectic community of different people with different beliefs or views. And so if this is your first time here, consider hitting that subscribe button, as we are excited about future debates coming up that you can see down there in the little marquee. I almost want to grab them out of there and pull them up. Very excited for those. But I'm going to hand it over to our good friend who, we were joking right before the stream started. We were talking about the nicknames. I'm sorry, Standing for Truth. I'm throwing you under the bus a little bit, but the nicknames such as Standing for Lies or Standing for Trash. These are brutal. Yeah, he always takes it well.
Well, like I told Nick before,
Yes, that's right. We'll keep it mellow. So, thank you both of the speakers for being here. Thank you, Standing for Truth, for helping moderating. And I'm going to hand it over to Standing for Truth, who will introduce the format for tonight's debate. And I will be in the live chat taking your questions. If you have any questions, feel free to fire them into the live chat. I will pull them out, put them in a list, and we will read them at the end for the speakers. So, thank you very much for that. And Standing for Truth, the floor is yours.
Thanks so much, James. Well, right now I'm definitely sitting for truth, so I feel relaxed, feel comfortable, really looking forward to this. Raw Matt, Nicholas. So the format for the debate will be 10-minute openings, followed by 5-minute rebuttals, and then a 30-minute discussion period, my favorite part, really looking forward to this, ending with a 5-minute closing statement, and then 20 minutes of question and answer. So Oh, can you hear me now, James?
Yes.
He's being silent for truth.
Silent for truth.
Sitting for truth and silent for truth. How much did you, I went over the entire format. Could you hear me on that one?
Lost you at question and answer.
Okay. So as long as you can hear me now, I guess that's good. Have we decided who's going first?
Yeah.
Okay, so we got Raw Matt. Raw Matt, I'm going to start the timer. You got 10 minutes for your opening. I'm going to start it on your first word. Go ahead, man.
All right, here we go. God created man to live forever. It was Adam's sin that brought death into the world. God told Adam, because of you, the earth is cursed. From that time forward, lifespan has been decreasing. Were the ages allegorical? No. Could the ages have been lunar months? No, because the patriarchs would have been having children like Kenan, which would have placed them at less than 6 years old, Seth at 8 years old, Enoch at 5. So obviously the lunar months are not realistic. The extreme ages of the years and the people in the Bible, like the 10 patriarchs, aren't just about them. They're actually mentioned throughout the Bible, where it shows that man life diminishes to his lowly place of 100. Even the epic Persian called the Book of Kings lists the similar ages, up to 1,000 years. You find these in Greece, China, India, Vietnam, South America, and Japan. Significant research was done on the matter of these chronological genealogies, which concluded that they line up to the calendars of many traditions and cultures worldwide. So we're pretty confident that the actual years in the calendars of the ancient Hebrew sects reflect this, including others. Jewish people believe that they were literal. It's in their language, it's their scriptures, they wrote it, so we presume that they understood their own language. So with different environmental conditions, such as the more pressure, which has been shown to increase lifespan, fruit flies in the hyperbaric biospheres in Texas live 10 times longer than normal just by increasing air pressure. With more magnetism in the past, we have been shown that increasing lifespan with just magnetism did something to the piranhas. They lived up to they grew up to 4 times larger and grew twice as long. The stronger ozone layer in the past that protects us from ultraviolet radiation, which would increase lifespan and health as well, while at the same time discovering that early Earth was actually like a Garden of Eden. We also have evidence from hyperbaric chambers, which are wonderful tools for testing. So far, we have made huge dragonflies and many other creatures, but they were testing mostly for size. But what they found out is that life expectancy went up in every single case. Since they were either replicating one or more of the aspects of ancient Earth, then we know by empirical evidence that life extension just from living back then was possible. And yes, Denisovans and Neanderthal were totally humans. Studies have shown that 95% of their DNA is identical to present-day humans. And Neanderthal DNA appears to fall within inside the variation of present-day humans. I know they portrayed Neanderthal as a hunched-over, hairy ape man, but this is not the case, as Neanderthal actually had less body hair than present-day humans. For example, this is due to a genetic marker called RS4849721. They are both shared by us and them. No surprise there. Here's an instrument they made. So they were making instruments and playing music, which no primate does. We know that ancient man was physically superior as well. They had larger brains, and we know today that larger brains correlate to longer lifespan. The larger, and we go back in time, the larger, as you can see, the physically superior they get. Scientists wanted to compare the Neanderthal genome to see how different they actually were. So they picked a random Neanderthal from the GenBank NC01137. The findings were shocking, with that Neanderthal had far less mutations than people today. This is what would be expected with creationism, with our model, if ancient man was superior than modern day man. Neanderthal children had no brow ridges. These brow ridges grew very slowly over time throughout their life. Even Neanderthal teens still had no brow ridges. So we know observationally they were extremely aged people, just like our model says. Neanderthal teeth have also been investigated, and there are more good evidence because they have high fractal enamel repair systems, including enamel regeneration inside their teeth, called pellicle, allowing their teeth to heal, unlike humans today. Here's the jaw of a 13-year-old kid from the 1960s. Research concluded that the jaw turned out to be the equivalent of today's child of 9 years old, meaning that a child in the late 1600s did in 13 years what it only takes 9 years today to accomplish for a child. This is more proof that we were slower developing in the past. Now, with no one alive right now at the age of 500, how can I make the argument that in the past that they did? Well, this is easy. I can answer this with a question. Can man today live to 900? Well, the answer is yes. Here's a gerontologist by the name of Dr. Aubrey de Grey. He's a pioneer in anti-aging, a biologist and biomedical gerontologist who works for the Sense Foundation, trying to discover a cure for aging once and for all. This isn't science fiction. It's on the horizon for all of us. This is what transhumanism movement is all about. It's about using science and technology like gene editing software, CRISPR-Cas9, to tap into our genetic activation dormant longevity genes so we can switch them on and live forever. So if man today has the potential to live for 1,000 years, why couldn't physically and genetically superior ancient man living in these far better environmental conditions with better foods, fewer diseases, live for that amount of time? Logically, I believe that I'm making the case that we could. But heavy bombardment can come from tobacco smoke, harmful food additives, radon gas, chemicals, and a lot of ultraviolet radiation. The MTHFR gene mutation function is actually broken anywhere from 20 to 70% in all people on Earth today. This matters because it's a master gene regulator. It controls how well other genes work. So the worse it gets, the worse others get. For example, here's the Dickinson children, dubbed the Methuselah children. They were kept prisoner by their mother in an attic for their entire childhood, never allowed outside to play even once. So they never were exposed to the damage of the sun's radiation, which causes what? You guessed it, more harmful mutations and faster aging. Here are the kids at 15, 13, and 18 years old, in that order. As you can see, their age is very, very slow. Another good example is the Jeannie Wiley. At 13 years old, she was basically strapped, her entire life, she was actually chained to a toilet because of her incontinence, and her dad thought she was retarded, so he didn't want anything to do with her, so he locked her in a room. Here she is at 19 years old. She was never exposed to the sun's radiation. She also stopped aging. Here's a retired truck driver, the left side of his face exposed to the sun as he drove his entire career. Here are identical twin sisters. One worked outside, the other worked inside. Here are two twins. One is a smoker, high mutational load, the other is not. Stacked with this and the fact that humans add 64 mutations every single generation, we have a problem. We also have aging diseases today. Here's Werner syndrome and here's progeria. These diseases are proven that they link genes to aging. Next, we have our biblical creation model, which lines up with the evidence of early Earth was being more conducive to living longer and preventing ultraviolet damage today. This stacked with the genetic factors that allow man to live much larger. Our original diet and how man ate compared to now is also very different. Today, people eat almost anything and cook nearly all of their foods. The Pottinger cat study proved without question that the harm that this does to a population over time. We humans are no different. We were created to eat a certain way, and no one does this anymore. With a generation after generation of doing everything wrong, we see what we see in the world today. This is evidence is topped with the fact that we know heirloom wild fresh foods are healthier and superior for health than today's high sugar content hybrids grown for our current sugar craving population that are picked early and sit on grocery store shelves for who knows how long. Most people don't even eat vegetables or fruit. So also, considering that nearly everybody has their longevity genes turned off in people permanently today from mutations or wrong SNP attachment to the gene, we have identified over 16 specific genes correlated with aging. So the best question should be, if man can now live to be 1,000 by turning back on these dormant genes, why couldn't man in the past who had these genes probably already functioning have less total mutation buildup not live so long? It seems logical based on the evidence that these mutations build up in the genome is crumbling. So with more pure genetics, this longevity would have been normal. So we believe that and we also know that magnetism makes things live longer, pressure makes things live longer. We know that diet makes things live longer. We know that fewer mutations mean less disease.
We've got 2 minutes, Matt. 2 minutes. Okay, nice.
We know that stronger genetics makes things live longer. Then why is it impossible to think then that all of those things put together, man couldn't live much longer? I think it's crazy to assume that they didn't. So I would love to know why a gerontologist, geneticist, and specialist in the field of aging, who all say that inside of us is the capacity to live like the people lived in the Bible, yet my opponent here will say that this is wrong. So if the biological evidence is inside of us and the scientific evidence shows that man has the ability to live to extreme ages currently, so if we have this potential inside of us right now, locked away, then it's pretty strong evidence that ancient man was far superior in the past, either way. Mankind could have reached these extreme numbers like the ancient texts talked about. Now, we do find evidence for these extreme ages when we test their bones. For example, Neanderthals that were found in Spain had far better and longer lives than those that were found in the north that lived in extreme cold regions of the world. They became inbred and cannibal, but all of the bones found in Spain were saturated in strontium, meaning they were plant eaters. They had large and thick skulls, and their dental examinations by Dr. Jack Quazzo proved that they were extremely aged human beings. And this can be denied or rationalized away, but the fact is, I don't believe that that's the case. I think that humans lived for a very, very long time, and we do have evidence to back this up. Or you can just continue to believe those who are not experts in aging, but have guessed or estimated ages based on their own personal interpretation of the evidence, based on their own uniformitarian belief that they were indoctrinated to believe. And they use biased assumptions when calibrating all molecular clocks.
15 seconds.
The theory of evolution is the only theory that is protected by law. It is not open to criticism and has removed all variants to be falsified and removed as a theory. Good enough. Let me stop screen sharing.
Awesome. Just on time. So thanks, Matt, for your opening presentation there. Nick, whenever you're ready, I've got you set for 10 minutes. I can start on your first word or whenever you're good to go.
All right, thank you. All right, well, thank you very much for having me. I think this is a very interesting topic. I'm going to speak a little bit about it in a broader sense at first, and then try to zoom in on a couple of interesting things. First of all, if evolution or any other theory is protected by law, this is the first I've heard of it. I do believe there are some protections against, there's protections against teaching evolution versus creationism under certain circumstances. That's all I know of, and it's certainly not protected from any kind of criticism. Now, science is, without a doubt, humankind's single most successful endeavor. In the last 350 years, science has accomplished more than we were able to accomplish in the 10,000 years before that. In every instance where the Bible and science have collided and they have disagreed, there has not been a single instance where the biblical interpretation or version of events is the one that we currently use. It has not survived contact with it. Now, it is true that a lot of elements of science can be somewhat frustrating. And I am in discussions with people constantly saying, well, it's unfair that science has this requirement or that requirement, but that is one of the reasons it's been so successful. And I think its success is irrefutable. We've gotten a man on the moon. We discovered electricity. We have antibiotics. We have a whole bunch of marvelous, wonderful things. And I think that demonstrates its success. On the other side, and science at present, the best that we know, the maximum human life expectancy is 125 years. The oldest human being that we can confirm to have lived is only 122 years old, was only 122 years old. Science tells us that Neanderthal life expectancy, well, the average life was 35. If you could pass certain, if you could pass certain milestones, you had a chance of living longer, but it wasn't necessarily easy to make it to at least at a minimum 35. We also know that, science shows no evidence whatsoever of these extended life expectancies in the Bible. What I find interesting is, and here is one of the downsides of science, you can get a whole bunch of people who claim all sorts of hypotheses. And one of the things that I saw scrolling up there was hypothesis, hypothesis, hypothesis. Science does not deal in hypotheses. It does in terms of when you're trying to study or when you're trying to come to a conclusion. But in terms of what is considered fact, it's not a hypothesis and it's not a guess. And there's absolutely no evidence whatsoever for extended life expectancy. There is reason to expect that they maybe live somewhat longer than us for possible reasons and less long for others. Did they have bacteria? Did they have things that could injure them? The oldest known bacteria goes back over 2.4 million years. Sorry, 2.4 billion years. And the oldest there was a honeybee that had deadly toxic bacteria in its belly, found in amber, that is 25 million years old. Now, every one of the scientific studies into either aging or into any other unusual claims of the Bible have been unable to verify any of them, and in fact in some cases have concluded that they did not happen. The Israelis concluded that the Exodus did not happen after they looked for evidence of it for 5 years and couldn't find any. Now, I find it interesting that we appear to be quoting scientists who are outliers and who have hypotheses, who say that either we could have lived longer, which I accept is a possibility. I just don't see any evidence for it and a good deal of evidence against. And yet we seem to be discussing claims of science as if it's scientific, as if it falls under the rigor and the credibility of science, while ignoring so much else of the credibility of science. There are other texts that have indeed said that people have lived a very long time. However, in Sumeria, the Book of Kings did not actually say that people had lived 1,000 years. It said that the oldest living king was 30,000 years old, which was in fact 3 times longer than how long the Bible says the earth has been around. So if we're going to start talking about what other texts say, it seems to me that we're cherry picking when we say, well, there are other texts that support it. Yes, but they actually refute other fundamental claims of the Bible, just as science in general does. In terms of how old, there are other reasons to believe that one might exaggerate the age of these people. It is true that some people have suggested a lunar calendar, and that is why the numbers are so wildly inconsistent with what we understand. It is true that that would have a number of people siring children at the age of 5, so that is unlikely. It still is not necessarily out of the realm of possibility if you include also other errors or other possible exceptions to them necessarily doing it accurately. There are other things in the Bible which many already take as metaphor, and in fact a great deal of the Bible is considered to be metaphor, and depending on how it's translated has meant different things to different people. Very few people actually accept 7 days as 7 earth days. Very few people. There's been huge discussions over the metaphor of the parable of the 10 minas for the first 1,300 years of Christianity. That was seen to be the second coming of Jesus Christ, and it was a metaphor for how people should go around slaughtering in his name. Only in the last 300 years did we say, no, it's actually a critique of King Herod. So it seems to me that there is a great deal of wiggle room in how we look at the Bible and how people have looked at the Bible, and assuming that these numbers are accurate, especially when in order to do so you have to cherry pick A, how you look at science, B, which scientists you are listening to, and C, what other texts such as the Book of Kings, which again the total length of rule of all kings in the Book of Kings is 230,000 years, which is well in excess of what the Bible says we lived for. Now, how long did we live back then? Again, there is science into this, but the science has found, and this is interesting because he had brought up the bones of a Neanderthal and how they had showed that he was, how old he was. That is, in fact, or not the bones. The
3 minutes, Nick. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. The teeth are one of the best indicators we have of how old somebody lived. And the reason is, especially if we know their diet, and they did live on a Mediterranean diet, and there are some significant differences in this diet, which I would like to get into, some pluses, some minuses. But those differences that factored in, and the closest diet right now to that is either a Mediterranean diet or a Japanese diet, believe it or not. At any rate, still has a wear on the teeth, and that wear is reasonably consistent. And based on that wear, you can tell how old someone is. And we have yet to discover any Neanderthal that was in excess of 85, 86 years old, and the average was 35. And it seems to me that if you're going to claim an exceptional lifespan, you have to be able to find a way, not that you believe it, not that you can hypothesize it, not that a few scientists concur with you, because I have met scientists who think that the earth is flat, and I am not kidding about that. You have to be able to demonstrate it somehow using science, and science which, by the way, you do not on one hand accept and on the other hand deny when you say, oh yes, but the flood was real, even though science says it was not. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that opening, Nick. You still had 1 minute and 44 seconds left. We can throw that into the discussion period, and that makes the discussion period 31 minutes and 44 seconds. So the next phase of the debate is the rebuttal round. We're going to go right into Ramat. Ramat, you have 5 minutes. I'm just going to set the clock here and start on your first word. Go ahead, man.
Okay, well, I want to address as much as I possibly can for him. So you said the science and the Bible are not really correlated. Every time they discover something, it actually disproves the Bible. But we've shown that the Bible describes as everybody coming from a single male and a single female. We found that all human beings come from a single female called mtDNA Eve. All males come from a Y chromosome Adam. They have found no other ancestors. They can presume all that they want they exist, but they've never actually found anything. The Bible talks about all man being created from the rib. Human beings, no primate, only human beings. You remove a rib, they can grow back. That's pretty profound. There's the odds that human language can't arise on its own. All empirical evidence shows that it can't, but Adam was taught language, it says. I don't know. So there's a lot of science that I believe is correlated, but I'll move on because I don't want to waste time with one thing. Neanderthal life being based on 35 years old is because they presumed that everything was so violent back then. Like, what would man have done with dinosaurs walking around them? Obviously, they didn't live too long because everything was just bigger and stronger and more damaging. Well, man has fire. And everything on Earth is scared of fire. I don't care how big the animal gets. If you have fire, you're pretty safe. And plus, man's small. If dinosaurs big, you live in a cave. I don't think man was dumb enough to live where dinosaurs live in the first place. I'm pretty sure they would have gotten away from things. But let's see, diet being different. Well, yeah, they did test the teeth. And as I was saying in the thing is they found that the Neanderthal actually have a repair mechanism, an enamel repair mechanism that's inside of them that actually showed that they rebuilt their teeth. So that was amazing because modern day people just don't have this. As far as the Sumerian king list, that's true. However, their mathematical system was very different. See, we use a base 10 system, which the Jewish Hebrew people do as well. And they used a base system of 60, the sexagesmal system. So when they were reading and counting the tens, they added 60 to it. That's why the ages look extremely long. And they're like, you see everything. So if you did the math and you looked at Methuselah, for example, and you multiply that times the 60, you get those extremely long ages because that's where the Sumerians did. They took what they knew and they translate. They have a different system when they moved moved into a different civilization. Oh, by the way, there was no geologist or gerontologist, that I know of that study longevity and aging that are creationists. All of these are people that believe that, they're transhumanists, actually. They believe that we will transcend through evolution our weak form that we're in, and we'll live indefinitely. That the cells inside of us, they're basically destined to never die. If their environment is clean, kind of like the HeLa cells. The HeLa cells have been found that if you remove the waste and you give them good nutrition, they cannot die. They live forever. But, if the environment, like the blood, if it's toxic and poison and messed up, then it's going to degrade and it's going to cause that cell to be messed up. And then when it clones itself and goes through mitosis and mitosis, then what's going to happen is it's going to carry that on to its next generation. And then we fall into senescence where the cells build up and they don't die and they cause cancer. So these people don't believe in the Bible at all, but they're saying that we could live for this thousands of years, what the Bible is actually telling us. So that's fascinating. Let's see. The Royal Society is the one where they actually kind of debate and determine whether or not evolution should be taught and how it should be. They are the ones that really kind of focus on how it should be taken. They think they should remove Darwin's theory now and they should go with a more proven. So it's much safer.
You've got 1 minute, Matt. 1 minute.
1 minute. Okay. Where am I? I think I got everything that he mentioned. Let's see. I could go down the list of things that said that were correlated. So, for example, the Bible says that man was created to eat from the fruit of the tree and animals from the plants of the ground. Well, we found now that humans are frugivores, not omnivores. We can't go outside and eat grass and eat leaves. We can't eat pigs raw. We'll die. We'll get horribly sick. We can't eat grains raw. We have to process these things. We have to cook them for that to occur. So we are formed to be frugivore. Matter of fact, since 2002, that is what I eat. I just eat fruits and nuts and seeds, if I soak and sprout those, actually. But that's been my diet. So I apply that, and that's what I've been doing for a long time. Even carnivores and obligate carnivores, if placed on plants, they can eat exactly all those things today. Matter of fact, I could even screen share that. I would hate to waste time doing that, but I'll find it. What? Time? Okay, thanks. Never mind, I won't show people.
Okay, thank you so much for that rebuttal, Matt. Nick, we are on to you. You got 5 minutes whenever you're ready.
All right, a lot to unpack there. I'll do my best as quickly as possible. Aging is caused when the cells in your body decay. They decay and your face gets longer, you get gray hair. The hair goes gray because hair follicles tend to die faster. What causes the color, I should say, dies faster, and then how they can't be held in anymore, yada, yada, yada. But it's all cell decay. What causes cell decay? Well, your cells replicate, and when they lose the ability to replicate properly, that's how they start to decay. What protects them against this is something called telomeres. Telomeres are what protect you from aging. The shorter your telomeres, the less your lifespan is going to be. Telomeres are always getting shorter. Every time your cells replicate, some of the telomeres are lost, and they get shorter and shorter and shorter. Eventually they run out. Your DNA strands begin to fray at the ends, and the cells can no longer reproduce at all, and you die. What causes telomere length to shorten? It is any number of things. Oxidation, actually. Air is toxic, believe it or not. It's oxygen that's toxic. The more oxygen you have, the faster it oxidizes, your cells decay, and it kills you faster. Unfortunately, you also happen to need it. By the way, also, I have here from the Company of Biologists, Journal of Experimental Biology, lifespan in oxidative stress shows a nonlinear response to atmospheric oxygen. As you increase the atmosphere levels, what actually happens is people age and die faster, not slower. And this is according to Journal of Experimental Biology. The reason is because there's more oxygen that you're breathing in. This causes your cells to decay faster. If there was more pressure in ancient times, you would die faster. Further, we did see a picture of the ozone layer. Yes, sun exposure does cause telomeres to get destroyed faster. Thank God nobody in the Bible stayed out in the sun too long. Yes, the ozone may well protect against it, but the ozone layer has been reasonably constant for thousands of years. It's only in the last really 50 or so that it started to go down. So that picture that you showed where you said, well, it was stronger earlier, and then you sort of tried to project back and suggest that it must have been even stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger. No, ice atmospheric core samples can tell us how much ozone there was, and there has been a reasonably consistent amount of ozone up until the last ice age, which would have been much further than the Bible even acknowledges that we've had. So they would have had to deal with sun. They would have had to deal. They were also drinkers. They weren't heavy drinkers. The wine that they would drink, they would lace with a good deal of water, so that that kind of countered the effects. But according to a 1916 study, they have discovered that any amount of alcohol actually decreases your lifespan. Alcohol use is a risk factor for death, and the only safe amount of alcohol was 0. And they drank a good deal of alcohol back then. I agree that fruits and vegetables, nuts, fish, other things in the Mediterranean diet would increase lifespan some. But there is nothing that could increase their amount of telomeres, and there is no evidence that there were more telomeres in Neanderthals or any of our prior ancestors. Telomeres seem to be roughly the same length, and there's actually a number of good biological genetic reasons for that. One of the things that ends up happening as well is cancer becomes a problem, other diseases become a problem. There were other diseases and cancers that predate, that have been going back for quite a long time. So at this point, given that I assume they were still breathing air, which is one of the causes of aging, the oxidation damages your telomeres. As soon as your telomeres are exhausted, you're dead, And the telomeres are the best sign of biological age, not chronological age, but biological age. And because of telomere limitations.
1 minute, Nick. You have 1 minute.
Thank you. At present, it is believed that man could never have exceeded 125 without solving that problem. And there's no evidence that our ancestors had longer telomeres or would have been any less subject to radiation, cancer, disease, or these other things I've discussed. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thanks for that rebuttal.
You really are sitting on the couch for truth, aren't you? You're just sitting there with a stopwatch, having a wine. I say thank you, and you're like, is he done?
I'm having too much fun here. This is great. So thanks so much for that rebuttal there. Nick, you've given up. So we got 31 seconds that we can add to the discussion. That gives us.
I noticed the language you're using. First, you said, I'm on to you, Nick. You said that. Anyone can go, and now you said I've given up. This is why I don't want you to mod anymore. You're biased. I've proven it. We're done.
You could just smell the bias.
Exactly. You threw the camera.
Never gives up. No worries.
Yeah.
So you know what? That gives us 32 minutes of discussion. So guys, this is going to be a lot of fun. I know the audience is excited. So I guess we can get right into it. Whoever wants to start, whether it's through a question. Guys, go ahead. The floor is yours. You got 32 minutes.
All right. I guess I can go first since you said a lot there. Okay, well, telomere length. Yeah, our ancestors didn't actually need longer telomere lengths because telomeres are padding at the end of each chromosome that shorten based on the damage that they do in cell replication, but they don't always have to shorten. Actually, they've actually found a number of things that actually make them regrow. One of these things you can take, it's called astragaloside 65, that's the active ingredient. It's called, it's an active ingredient in astragalus root, and it's called astragaloside 65. And they sell a product that's very, very expensive, but it's the active ingredient. And what it does is it boosts telomere length back up very, very high. So it shows that there's a reduction. They've also found that there's a couple things that boost telomere length outside of that. Another really good one is actually a carbon atom, a fullerene number 60. They've actually found that when they inject mice in the stomach with olive oil, with this fullerene number 60, that their telomere length boosted up so much that brown mice that only lived for an average of 2 years were killed after the experiment after 5 years. So Neanderthal, we know, had activated carbon itself because that's how they blew their handprint in cave paintings. They would take this charcoal and blow it, and they would get these mural pictures. So perhaps they could have consumed these things as well. Might have boosted their longevity, their telomeres. The environment, oxygen does cause more oxidative stress. That's why endurance athletes have more oxidative damage than short-term, than people that don't. But these are mitigated based on atmospheric conditions. And since we believe that the older atmosphere was more conducive, not because of the ozone itself, but because we believe that there was a canopy of water over it that fell during the flood. That itself was about 2 to 3 to 4 inches thick, they believe. And that would have changed the atmospheric condition, but have also really instantly repaired the ultraviolet damage, which would have been, shortening the telomeres and things like that as well. But since this is back and forth, go ahead.
Yeah, well, no, if I can add, so when you say they believe or we believe, who precisely is this? What evidence is there for the canopy that you were talking about on this water layer?
The canopy is, I say we, because that's a creationist model. The scientific community doesn't look at a canopy of ancient water that surrounded the earth. It was described in the Bible, and then it's not described in the Bible. It was talking about the fountains of the deep breaking forth, and then a rain for 40 days coming from a firmament. So we believe that it fell in. And when you read the Jewish literature, they believe that the dome was about 3 or 4 inches thick. And that was written down in their old text. That's not there anymore. So we concluded that was probably what made the things live longer, that there was more saturation, that the pressure was higher. You go back in time, the Earth was spinning faster, so there was a different atmosphere. And we see that when we test these things, there's more, and the sap of different things.
Well, we haven't seen that in ice core samples, which can go back far further than what you're talking about. And when you take an ice core sample, one of the great things about the North Pole and the South Pole is that they really haven't been touched by anything but the environment, but the atmosphere for quite a long time. So you can drill a hole very, very far down, and as snow falls, the snow actually traps a bit of the atmosphere in underneath as it falls. It then hardens, crystallizes, and you have atmosphere trapped in the ice. You then get 10, 15, 20, hundreds of feet of ice that show the atmosphere back 10, 20, 30, 100, 200, 1,000, 5,000, 10,000, 100,000 years. Maybe you can go back and tell what the atmosphere has been doing that far back. And that I'm aware of, there's absolutely no evidence to suggest any of that.
Well, we actually believe that differently when it comes to the ice core layers, because we actually found what's called the Lost Squadron, and the Lost Squadron were a plane that were lost during World War II, and they were when a very rich man wanted to come along and he wanted to buy those planes and he put them on his property or start a museum. Not really sure which one he wanted to do, but he wanted to go find these planes, so he spent a lot of money and he went out there and he assumed that he would just see the planes, but he couldn't. And they were actually so far down that when they actually dug down, they found them, which would have been an equivalent of 135,000 years, because the layers weren't laid down every year. They were laid down by cold, hot, cold, hot, cold, hot. So the prediction of ice core layers, when they see those strata, which look like they're annual, are actually just dependent on the day or the season, and they can fluctuate and change. So
we've had observers up there since the 60s, and the observers, and I actually know observers who spend 6 months at a time in the Arctic, and that's not what they report actually seeing. That's not what they report how the ice layers are being formed. They're being formed precisely as scientists describe them.
I'm maybe in the poles because it's just continuously cold like that. There.
That's why they have to take that. You cannot take ice core samples from somewhere where the temperature goes to a point where it would melt it. You would then release the atmosphere into the air, and it would be absolutely worthless, and you couldn't do it. You have to do it at a place where there is ice that has been there literally for thousands of years. And there are places on this planet at the poles where ice has existed for thousands of years, and it falls and can be observed to fall in that pattern.
Would you consider Greenland to be one of those places?
I don't know enough, but I would have to say probably not, since as I recall, Greenland does thaw. I've never heard of an ice core sample being taken in Greenland. It may or may not. The only ice core samples that I know of are in the Arctic.
Okay, because that's where that's where those planes were found from. They were found in Greenland. So.
Well, Greenland does have some ice that I believe has been around for thousands of years. In fact, no, I know it's got ice that's been around for thousands of years, but I don't know.
I'm sorry to interrupt, guys. I just got some notification from the chat. If we could just move it back to, what the evidence is for humans, whether or not they live to 900 years. Go ahead, guys.
Okay.
All right, I do think the environment has something to do with that, because we're talking about radiation and its effect on human cells, which is absolutely, and I agree with you on that. The picture of the guy with the sun having hit his face, that's exactly what sun damage does. And one of my concerns is the people in the Bible were out in the sun a very good deal. But to move on to a different subject, telomere length, because we were talking about that. One of the reasons that you need shorter telomeres is because that is an insulation against cancer. If your telomeres get too long, or if your telomeres are somehow regenerated, what would end up happening, and what they've actually been able to see in instances where they've been able to do this, which has been spotty at best as I understand it, but they've done it in mice, and what happens is they get cancer. And the reason they get cancer is because the cells are not actually dying off when they should. The truth is, everybody gets cancer all the time, every single day. All of us have loads of cancer cells. Those cells have numerous ways of self-destructing. And in a normal, healthy human being, they will self-destruct and they won't go out of control. What we call cancer is really one of those cells that is reproducing at an alarming rate that cannot be destroyed in and of itself. It won't destroy itself. Every cell has the ability to destroy itself. I forget what the sac is called, but it's a sac of fluid that will rupture and destroy the cell. Or it can be destroyed when it replicates too many times and the telomeres are destroyed. If you either lengthen the telomeres or find a way to regenerate the telomeres, any animal in which you do this would start having a significantly higher quantity of life-threatening cancer because they're no longer able to destroy cancer cells. This strikes me as a problem.
Well, the telomere pattern, you don't want telomeres too long, but it's actually the reduction that actually causes the biggest problem, because when they take damage, they shorten. So that's what that TA65 does. It boosts them back up. But if the atmospheric was more conducive, which all these animals are showing that they're living longer when they're replicated in these older environments. Of course, no humans actually gotten one, because I guess they don't want to experiment on a human. They should, but the animals live longer, especially the insects. But they don't really match us because they absorb oxygen through their skin. But with the less mutations of ancient human beings, and we know that mutations are what causes diseases in us, and dilapidation, and more disease. And cancer is expected to double within the next 10 years. That's really, really quickly. So if we're compounding these more diseases, then we can go back and we can extrapolate that there's less diseases and less mutations, then we should be able to find a more pure human being. And that's what we believe Adam and Eve were, a less mutation group of people. And then we see more mutations and more diseases and more problems now. Only medical intervention is stepping in now to keep us along. So when we look at the groups of people, in Africa, they say they live about 50 years, but that's only because they take infant mortality into the equation, not
they do.
Total lifespan.
That's true, they do. But I did want to make a point. My uncle is available for human testing. So if they are looking for human testing, he hasn't volunteered, but I know his name and address, and
I think there's a place in Texas that will take him.
Perfect. All right, so let's see, telomere length. Once again, if you find a way to regenerate the telomeres, you're going to have a problem where any kind of uncontrolled reproduction of the cells is no longer. You've just destroyed one of the major mechanisms in stopping uncontrolled reproduction, i.e. stopping cancer. So you're going to see an increase in cancer, and it doesn't matter how you increase it. If you if you rejuvenate the telomeres somehow by a healthy lifestyle, you're going to have that problem. Second of all, oh shoot, I'm sorry. I guess I was trying too much to be clever, and so I've forgotten or lost track of a couple of the comments that you had made. Well, you had said what we expect to see and what we think happened, and that we think Neanderthals were stronger in one way, or because of fewer mutations. Once again, that we kind of concerns me, because I don't think that's the scientific community, and it seems like that's a hypothesis and not really evidence. I will say that the cause of increased mutations so far, it could be any number of things, but at a minimum, I agree with you, we are doing severe damage to our environment. We have done damage to the ozone layer. We've done damage to, we've had multiple nuclear detonations, both underground and on the surface. We've had had a number of carcinogens that we've put into our environment. So I think you're going to see mutations go up for those reasons alone. I don't think that you can extrapolate backwards and say, ergo, it was much better back thousands and thousands of years ago. Further, I will add that we have been able to eliminate a lot of diseases that they would have still had at that time, and a number of bacteria we can prove were still there. They did not have antibiotics then. That was a huge boost in our lifestyle. They did not have antibiotics, but they did have bacteria. And that we know, we've been able to find that in amber. So the idea that maybe after Adam and Eve, we had this pristine environment where there were no bacteria or carcinogens or things that could hurt people, I don't see any evidence for that, and a good deal of evidence to the contrary.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, you're right. If telomeres never shortened at all, and we could live for 1,000 years, we would die from cancer. It's called senescence, and you were right about that. But the senolytic activators have now been discovered for the first time ever. And what they actually found is, it's quite funny, they're actually found in compounds that our ancestors would have been able to obtain. Matter of fact, they've actually found that in a senolytic activator would be found in red onions and capers. These things are actually shown that they destroy senescence. I don't have any around me. What they do is these, especially when combined, with black tea. They've actually found that the theaflavins combined with the quercetin and the other ingredients, they've actually found that they're very, very anti-senolytic. They destroy the cancer buildup that's going in. And since they believe that they just ate these foods on a natural daily basis, because they ate more normal foods, or I should say wild foods outside, that they would have actually been able to destroy the cancer before it actually builds up. But it's such a new avenue of science right now that, you know, people they weren't really looking there. They were looking, in the medical field, looks at chemicals to kind of fix things. They don't really look at herbalism.
But they've looked at cancer rates in the Mediterranean, and people who still have that diet, and while admittedly in some cases they do have a lower cancer rate, it's by a few percentage points. To suggest that the diet and these things that you say they would have had ready access to, people eat those things right now, and there are some cultures that have been eating those things for the last 200 years and have not produced or shown a significant reduction in cancer.
Yeah, but remember the Pottinger study, when they actually took the animals' normal diet and they put them on a cooked food diet. These are animals in zoos. They by the fourth generation, they had horrible mutation problems and everything, because you took what they were designed to do and messed it up, kind of like humans today. You take humans back then, which were obeying what God told them to consume and were telling them to eat. We believe that those cancers, those mutations, these glycation or advanced glycotic end products won't be building up. You know, when you go to Burger King, you get horribly advanced glycotic end products because they process their foods and they're cooked, they're roasted by fire, and they're horrible. That's why they found that certain people age much faster. They have identical twins, and when you test an identical twin, you know, one will have cancer but the other won't. It's because of their lifestyle choices. So we believe that these lifestyle choices are what allow these people to live for so much longer. Also, the germline is the mutation load of that's passed on to the next generation that gets compounded. Those are the ones that kind of build up. They're the ones that accumulate by 63 to 64 mutations every single generation by the Icelandic people. They actually found from them. So these, if we extrapolate that and we go by 64 mutations every single generation, and we just do the simple math, we don't use the phylogenetic testing method, which we presume that there's a common ancestor 65 million years ago, but we just do 64 and then we minus that every 25 years generation, and we go back to ground zero. We go back about 6,000 years to Adam, which is ground zero for mutation rate. And so that's why sorry, I don't want to interrupt. Go ahead.
No, please finish.
That's why Dr. Jensen predicted the extinction of the human race in 350 generations, and right now we're in the 300th generation. So his prediction is based on this mutational load of slightly deleterious mutations that constantly build problems. That's why if you look at what causes this cancer, prostate cancer, what causes breast cancer, it's a mutation of the BRCA1 and 2 gene. What causes prostate cancer? It's another mutation of another gene. So if we know that mutations are correlated with all these different diseases, but you take these mutations away with the original people, they don't have to worry about those diseases. They don't have to worry about those cancers. So we believe that the more pure and stronger we get these genetics, the stronger the people were. Like, for example, I don't want you to have gray hair, for example, right? So I say the graying of hair is a weakness of the liver, the shutdown of a metabolic enzyme called glutathione reductase and glutathione peroxidase. And it's what reduces a buildup of hydrogen peroxide in the body, which bleaches your hair white. So if you take a herb called Polygium multiflorum, also known as faux tie, it boosts this glutathione level and it makes your gray hair go away. So if the ancients had better livers, better genetics, less mutations, we believe that they could have lived a very long time. And that post that I did show on my thing where it showed that the Neanderthal tested for genes, that wasn't a creationist test. That was actually a scientific thing. I actually made a video on it on Standing for Truth's channel, which showed that they did the mutational load and they found Neanderthal only had a handful, but modern day has hundreds. So.
All right. I think I'm gonna reiterate sort of a similar objection, which was there was a lot of we believe, including sort of early on, and I'm not. I think it's difficult to find scientific evidence in support of most of these claims. I do agree with some of the broader ones. Our food habits are extraordinarily destructive to us. There is no evidence that I've seen that is sufficient enough. And I think it's an interesting argument. Okay, if human beings for generations have been eating poor foods, then that would have changed us enough that we would no longer be the same species. Well, not the same species. Let me rephrase that. That the damage was so progressive enough. I think this is what you're saying, that even today, if we were to eat all the proper foods, we would not see the full benefits that they would have seen 6,000 years ago. My objection to that is that we still discover on occasion new tribes in the Amazon. We've discovered new tribes in, what was the most recent one, that have much closer to what I think you would consider proper eating habits, and they have not been exposed to modern civilization. And to the best of my knowledge, every one of them that we've discovered has a normal lifespan, or at least what we would consider to be a normal lifespan as well.
Okay, I'll answer that one. Africa. I'm just making a note. So do you believe then, yourself, that humans today soon will live to 1,000 years by turning on these old genes? Do you think that?
To me, as far as I understand, the biggest problem is the telomeres. And we have found a few interesting things about telomeres that we can, in fact, affect them, which is new information, but the effect that we've been able to exert is very minor. There are lobsters which have lived over 1,000 years. I mean, a lobster, 1,000 years old. We are still trying to understand how the lobster can get away with that, because we're all insanely jealous. But so we're still trying to figure that out, and I think that hypothetically, if we could solve a whole bunch of problems that we barely even know exist yet, perhaps, but to the best of our scientific understanding, the biggest problem is the telomeres. Nobody has even a hypothetical way or a theoretical way to solve that problem. Every solving of that problem causes other problems that would end up being prohibitive. You also have additional problems with life expectancy, which is even if you fix the telomeres, you can still have other diseases that crop in and shorten life expectancy. So I think the 1,000, I'm a little tired, forgive me. Well, the 125 cap that we sort of currently see as the standard cap is likely to be around for a little while, and if we make any significant changes, to it, we're going to be lucky to do much more than 10, 15, maybe 20% tops would be my experience. My educated guess, having no experience in the field.
All right. The lobster, good one. That was actually based on, they have a built-in high amount of metabolic enzyme called superoxide dismutase. They produce hundreds. Like, for example, you have a sea turtle. They produce about 250 micrograms per deciliter of superoxide dismutase. They live about 250 years. Humans only produce about 80 right now. So anyway, that was the answer to that one. Did you know when they find these lost tribes?
Thank you. That's good to know.
Yeah. The more superoxide dismutase your body can make, the longer you can live. And I have a list of things that can boost that up. Real quick for the audience.
That's a antioxidant?
Yes, it's the most powerful antioxidant. Your liver makes it. Basically, your liver makes superoxide dismutase, and then it makes glutathione peroxidase to break down the hydrogen peroxide that the superoxide dismutase did. So it's kind of like a ladder. It breaks these things down. But our liver stops functioning well at age 27.
Sitting on the couch for truth, could I have your attention for a second? Somebody in the live chat was giving me a hard time saying, what? Breathing is toxic? Did Nick really just say that? He just agreed with me. I want you to find that guy and say, no. Thank you. I'm sorry for interrupting.
I'll find him for you, Nick.
I appreciate it.
Least I could do for you. Keep her going, guys. Keep her going.
All right. I'm starting to get a little tapped out. I apologize. I did not. I probably couldn't have done anything about it. I'm starting to get a little tired and a little wonky. I can certainly continue for a bit longer, but I apologize. I didn't have the specs for the debate until just a short while ago, and I was not as prepared as I'd like to be. I apologize. But I can keep going. So let's keep going until either I collapse or I say something really stupid, which most people would say I've already done several times in this debate already.
No problem. You guys are doing great. The audience is having a good time. We've got exactly 9 minutes left. So
I can do that.
Yeah, go ahead, guys.
Well, if it's only 9 minutes and he's going to go after that, we could Q&A for audience. How's that?
I like that plan. Let's do it.
Deal. That sounds
Well,
good.
we've got concluding statements if you wanted to kind of just sum everything up in case either of you felt anything was left open-ended. You can do a quick concluding statements. Up to you guys.
I'm happy either way.
Yeah, same either way.
You got it.
Give me 1-2 minutes, I guess.
Deal.
Sounds good.
Yeah, let's each do 2 minutes. I think that's perfect.
Okay. Want to go first? Go ahead.
Oh, sure, I'll go first, but if you keep being this reasonable, I'm going to have to like you, and then I don't know what I'm going to do with myself. So please do something unreasonable pretty soon. All right, well, thank you very much. I certainly enjoyed it. Once again, I think he said a lot of things that have some grounding in truth. What I think, perfect. Oh, perfect. Actually, no, I just like him more. Okay, that's a problem. Oh, God.
Hello there, Pharaoh Matt.
I can get my sword. All right, I won't do that just yet. I'll wait till he says something that I don't like. I think a lot of what he says has significant grounding in truth. Oh, God, I can't believe I just said that. Has significant grounding in science. But I think a lot of it also ends up being speculation. I think it ends up being speculation with an assumption that the Bible is true. And again, so far in the past, what usually ends up happening in my experience is when the Bible and science collide, oh my God, he didn't just do that. Okay. When the science and the Bible collide, the Bible usually ends up having to be reinterpreted in some way to explain why it's not what we're finding in the world. And if you keep doing it, you can keep doing that ad infinitum and just keep doing it and keep doing it. And that's sort of where we are now, which is, well, okay, science has found all these things. So within that framework, how can we say that there was a dome of water, and how can we continue working with our assumption that the Bible is true and fit it in with what's actually being discovered? There is no evidence that people lived to be this long. I think there is significant evidence that they did not. There is certainly no reason I can find to think they did. And while there is reason to think that they had some things that would help them live a little bit longer, most of that is mitigated by a number of things that would actually shorten their lifespan. But at any rate, I think that's about it. Thank you again, and I'll move on to King Tut over there.
All right.
Well, thank you so much there for your concluding statement, Nick. King Tut or King Matt, you got the floor. You got a couple minutes there.
All right. Well, the topic was could people have lived to 900? And I think with the evidence that we have, that I can prove that. When we look at the bones, if we look at the thickness of the strontium levels and the thickness of the bones and the fact that they can repair things that we can no longer repair, the fact that if you look at the physical abilities of them, they could run faster. They found a place in Australia dubbed the foot tracks called T8, where they found a Neanderthal man decided to just take off running arbitrarily. We don't know if he was running away from something or towards something, but he got up to speeds of 27 miles an hour. This is some random average Neanderthal. Vastly superior than us. So when we have these mutation buildup and we have more disease now, we can logically conclude that we had less in the past. So if disease is what's killing us today, the majority of us, they think 1 out of every 2 people are going to die from cancer. That doesn't even bring into consideration of heart disease and diabetes and other diseases that are all regulated or determined by what we're eating and our environment. So if you have what we ate better and you have a better environment, then it's kind of logical to conclude that ancient man was better. And when you look at the bones and you see the structural differences and how strong the ancient man was and how superior they were, you just kind of wonder, like, well, I could see how they could live longer. But then we have the dental evidence too, which shows that their enamel was repairing itself. So we can't look at dental evidence and extrapolate that, well, they had a little bit, so they must have been dying at 35. Well, yeah, if they were healing though, it's a little bit different then. You can't really compare it. It's like a muscle. If it's regenerating, you can't look at a muscle and guess of its age because it's repairing itself. So it's not a very good indicator anymore. So if we have a more conducive environment, less mutations, I think that humans could have definitely lived extremely long amounts of time. And I think that the evidence is good. And the evidence is inside of us, and it's locked away, and it's locked up in dormant genes that are now turned off that were once turned on. We turn them back on again. I think that, we have 7 sirtuins. We have the FOXO genes. We have we have a list. I think there's over 16 that they've discovered, and who knows how many more they're going to find. Human beings have 19,000 genes inside of us. And they're only...
That would be 2 minutes, Matt.
I bet.
Thank you very much from both of our speakers. We appreciate your speeches, and want to remind everybody that their links are in the description. So if you enjoy their content, well, you can get more right there. We're going to move into the Q&A. So Standing for Truth, what we'll do is just switching back and forth, reading each question, and we can start with the super chats. I forgot to mention earlier, super chats, basically the way we do it at the channel is, if you're new, you can make a comment toward one of the debaters if you want. They, of course, would get a chance to quickly respond, and then the super chats will just go to the top of the list. We're going to try to keep, however, today, just to keep it as short as possible so our speakers, let's see, so we respect their time, especially given...
Oh, please, Matt Tutt has been doing this for at least 2,000 years.
So we closed the Q&A, so we're going to try to move short and sweet through this. Standing for Truth, if you want to read off that first super chat from Stephen Steen, you can.
Stephen Steen's about to give us all a good laugh, and laughter's the best medicine. So Stephen Steen, super chat. Thanks for your super chat there, Stephen. He says, dangerous debate, ? Not as dangerous as James' smile.
Oh, he's got an admirer.
Don't encourage him.
That's your own fan club, James.
He's a sick man, but we appreciate.
Well, that goes without saying.
Yes, he's always trolling me. I don't know but we appreciate that super chat. Thanks, Stephen, for being here and hanging with us. We had one from Sigifredo Sarabia. Thanks for your super chat as well. He asked, did every iguana become a dragon? Where did they go?
But did every dragon become an iguana?
I think it was, I think my guess is...
I think that may be I think he may have switched what he meant.
Maybe, that could be.
Because we still have iguanas, and we don't have dragons. So I can't believe he meant that the way he wrote it.
I wonder...
Either that or I need to take mescaline. One of the two.
You got it. I don't know if it was... Okay, well, Sigifredo's, I'm watching in the chat in case you want to clarify. I will keep an eye out. He just shot in another one as well. Thanks for your super chat, Sigifredo. He asked, how do you use Neanderthals as defense for the 6,000-year-old Earth?
So, I'm guessing that one's to me. So in Neanderthal, when they tested them, they found they have the exact same components as modern human beings. They were just they have the same blood type. Primates don't have the same blood types. They have the same genes that are shared by us. They found that they have red hair. They didn't have black hair. They found that they had freckles. They found that they have they made clothing. They even found a Neanderthal in Europe that actually had chainmail on it. That was incredible. So we know that they were human based on their genetics. It's not just like some assumption where I'm like, oh, just Neanderthal men, they look close enough. You know, they're probably human. Now it's pretty understandable. I think even most creationists now assume that Neanderthal are full humans. They weren't some new species that had nothing to do with us. Different species can't interbreed and make children. Neanderthal and human beings made it. So they were human beings. So.
You got it. Standing for Truth. You've got the next one, bud.
Okay, so I've got Ronald Mendonca here. Thanks for your super chat, Ronald. He says Chewbacca, 234 years old. Gandalf, 11,000 years old. Yoda, 900 years old. These and Bible stories are just that, stories.
Well, I assume that was to me, and I think I just lost the debate. I can't beat the Chewbacca defense. We all know that. Anyone who's seen South Park knows you cannot beat the Chewbacca defense. It's over. It was nice. I appreciate everyone's time.
Well, we appreciate your time too, Nick.
We do have... I'm going to quick read through one that just came in addition to Mitchell's. Thanks for your super chat, Mitchell. He is just no comment, but we appreciate your super chat. It means a lot to have your support. And also, forgive me, Raw Matt, if you had a response that you wanted to say to that last super chat, I didn't mean to cut you off if you had
on Yoda. I never met the guy.
Okay, you got it. And Jake 3D, thanks for your super chat. He says, I must have academic sources for 25 mile per hour Neanderthals?
Absolutely. I'll screen share. Hold
That's
on.
super interesting.
Yeah, I was curious about that one too. There was one or two where I wanted sources. I can maybe go into the super chats and ask for sources.
If I can quick ask a question to the chat, I'm curious. We have Slam mentioned we have some sort of like warning as you enter into the channel. Is that true? Like when people clicked into the channel, did they say something about like warning you may be viewing offensive content? I don't know why that would be, but
I can check.
I don't think she's fibbing. I don't think she's joking, but it might
sure
not be
she's
everybody.
not.
And I'm like, I think we have such an innocuous channel. I know that we like,
I know I'm pretty hardcore, man, but this is really.
yes, that's right, Nick.
Sorry if I got you demonetized. I really am.
Nick, you got to tone it down. You're hurting way too many feelings in here.
They expected some violence out of this one, huh?
Nick got us. Okay, so Willie Mays fan said he did not get a warning. Brangel didn't get one. Cody, Frank, Walter, Will. Thanks. Maybe it was just Slam. I wonder if it could be that Slam, maybe your settings are set for like more tame content. And I guess once in a while we're a little controversial because we've had some people in the past.
It may
I think
just
that's
be
what-
Matt's outfit there. It could be Matt's outfit.
That's
Yeah, that'll do. So I just came in on
I'm feeling rather offended right now. No, I'm just kidding.
I came in on a signed out account and I got nothing. I can see the live debate. Everything's good on my end.
Huh, that's weird. I think it's because of Matt's cultural appropriation. That's pretty bad, Matt. But
Him and Kim Kardashian, we're gonna have to.
triggered. Okay, so we appreciate. Thanks for that. I appreciate the feedback. By the way, it is true though that one thing that's weird is we do sometimes. I don't know if it's because of the last video that we have. Sometimes if we have a controversial debate prior, the next video will be automatically demonetized, and it's not a big deal. Like we're not doing it for I'm doing it because I just love it. But it is true that like for software upgrades and stuff like that, Photoshop, we're happy to be monetized. And sometimes it's even one time we had a debate that was I think quasi controversial, and the next video I uploaded was the channel trailer. It only had music, no words, and it got demonetized. I was like, what? Like what?
That's the one to get demonetized actually, because you could always just. You're not selling ads during the trailer, are you? I mean, that's the perfect one to get demonetized. Now you can do an Aaron Raw or something else like that, and you're gonna be fine.
I don't know. I mean, I think we're pretty easygoing. But anyway, all right, Standing for Truth. If you want to read the next one, we'll keep moving. But thanks for that feedback.
No problem. So it looks like I got a question here from Emotionally Stunted Emoticon. So he asks, this is a question for Raw Matt. He asks, isn't it particularly strange that these unusually old ages were mostly, and then in brackets he says, if not always, attributed to men? Seems a bit egotistical to me to not mention animals. Go ahead, Matt.
I don't think they cared about studying animals at all back then. That's more current kind of research. People back then, animals were considered servitude. They weren't meant to be eaten. It was meant like a cattle for pulling a plow, things like that. Animals weren't for anything but for man. We have dominion over them. We weren't supposed to kill and slaughter and do bad things to them. We test them for different things. People were just it would be pets, kind of like a dog. You test and beat on your dog. But, I don't think vivisection was very popular pre-flood. And as for James, I can't post the information that person wanted. So what I'll do is I'll real quick read. Anthropologist Peter McAllister recently published a book called Manthroponology, The Science of the Inadequate Man, an analysis on the footsteps of one of the men's footprints preserved in a fossil clay bed in Australia, dubbed TH, showed that he reached 37 kilometers on soft, muddy lake bed edge. So that was for a reply earlier. I hope I answered emotionally stunted. I hope that's kind of what he was asking.
Standing for Truth, if you can read the next several questions, and then Also, I am finally, forgive me, I got sidetracked earlier. I'm putting Nick's actual web page in the description because I said I do that at the beginning of the stream. I'm doing it literally right now. So,
And my YouTube channel, I'd appreciate as well if you. It's
you betcha.
Nicholas Lamar Suter. Yeah, thank you so much.
Gladly.
Okay, so it looks like I got the next question here then from Richard Madsen. Another question for Matt. He asks, would ancient oxygen levels be before Homo sapien, even in a Darwinistic evolutionary model? Go ahead, Matt.
Before, we believe in kind of like irreducible complexity. You can't have everything's tied together at once. So if there's no real oxygen, you have a big problem. I know that the theory of abiogenesis has to remove oxygen because the left-hand amino acids, nothing can really form if the formation of oxygen is present because of oxidation. So they had to remove oxygen from the theory, but that's not what we actually found. As my presentation kind of showed, that they actually found that by testing early meteorites, they actually found that the oxygen content was more than it is today. So it's not less like they predicted. So I guess that answers that one. I can scroll up and show you again.
Okay, thanks for the answer there, Matt. Unless you had something to say, Nick, I can go on to the next one.
I think he went AFK.
I did not go AFK. You have absolutely no faith. I just wanted to demonstrate that you would actually keep making an argument against an empty chair, which is called an empty chair interview, and it's very disingenuous. I have nothing to say. Thank you. Keep going.
There's my screen.
Awesome.
I normally most people who see my debates know this. I sometimes have to walk, and that's why I have a wireless headset so I can still hear everything. So it's like they see the chair. People who haven't seen me before. So James knows. I figured he'd bail me out and say, "Yeah, Nick is still there. I'm still here.
Yeah,
I'm listening. Every word you say. I'm completely listening in."
Hey, Nick, you're walking for truth, man. Nothing wrong with that. So next question from Saint Knight. Thanks for your question. This one's for Matt again. Matt, you're very popular tonight. What about this passage?
He's cheating. He took off his shirt. Of course he's getting all the super chats. I would listen. I'd take off my shirt too, but all the super chats would be, Nick, put your shirt back on.
I always thought Halloween was in October, but party on.
Not where I live.
Okay, so the passage. So he says, what about this passage? Then the Lord said, my spirit shall not abide in man forever, for he is flesh. His days shall be 120 years. I think that's in Genesis. He doesn't specify, though.
Well, that was talking about the people after the flood. He was very disappointed in man and how sinful they were and how their heart was continuously filled with contempt and evil. And so he said he regretted that he had made man to live for so long, and so he reduced the age. So after the flood, you see a dramatic decline in the parameters of how long people were to live, and now look around, we don't actually pass that 125-year-old mark, which is mentioned. So it's pretty good prediction on that.
Okay, thanks for the answer. You know what? We got a question here for Nick, so get ready, Nick. Someone's coming after you. His name is Praise I Am That I Am. His question is, thanks for the question there, Praise. He says, how can you not believe humans lived longer thousands of years ago when genomes were pristine and much longer? Go ahead, Nick.
Well, first of all, there's a number of reasons. The length would have absolutely nothing to do with it. The biggest thing that would have something to do with it would first of all be violence. It was a much more violent time, and by the way, and we had discussed this before, but there's two issues here. First is the average life expectancy. The second is what's the top, because violence was also a much bigger problem in ancient, in the Bible times than today by no small margin. Having said that, if you could survive that, the question is, okay, then what really is the life expectancy based on your biology? And given the fact that we can expect that, and all indications are that the environment was reasonably the same, and that in fact there were other problems with foodborne illnesses if they weren't prepared properly, other diseases that we have now dealt with. Some were reasonably new, some have been around for quite some time. There's no reason to expect that life expectancy would have been any higher, if it probably in fact lower. And in fact that's what we see. And again, the current life expectancy for Neanderthal was about 35 years old.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate that answer there, Nick. We'll go right into the next one then. This one is from Stephen Steen. Question for Raw Matt. If God made 900-year-old humans, James would have been his first pick. Checkmate, Nick. Ooh, Stephen's back at it with the compliments again.
I keep getting my butt handed to me on this one. This is this is not going well.
At least you're a good sport about it, Nick. We appreciate it.
Oh, thank you.
Come back anytime.
All right.
We had just right
This
now.
isn't even your channel. Wait a minute. James is the one.
Wait a minute, James. Where'd you go?
We had just had a super chat. Jake 3D, thanks for your super chat, who said, Matt, you are denying, quote unquote, God by trying to extend life.
Well, if he created man to live forever and sin brought death into the world, we're not trying to live forever. We're just trying to extend our lifespan. It's like saying, there's no reason to eat better anymore. I guess it's just better to get over with. No, God wants you to be healthy and happy and live a long time, or else he would have never created us to be that way. So, it's kind of strange to say that he doesn't, we glorify God in our health. We can't glorify God if we're sick and in the hospital and dying. Matter of fact, that's when most people blame God for their problems. We're supposed to be healthy and happy and helping others. Kind of odd to say that it's denying God. I don't know. He made people to live forever.
Gotcha. And really quick, before we get to more questions, I want to quick call attention to the fact that this is, I just saw it, like I said, on Nick's Twitter. So I'm pulling up your debate poster for your upcoming debate with Kent Hovind, which is going to be, I'm sure, exciting. And I just want to let people know about it. We want you in the audience to have your choice of, we want to let you know about debates no matter where they are, so that you can say, yeah, sure, I'll check it out over there. Nick, is this going to be at your channel, or is it going to be at Kent Hovind or another one?
It's at his channel, Kent Hovind's channel. I believe it's the 28th. Is Evolution True?
Very exciting. Let's see. I think technically, forgive me, I know this is not tactful, but just because it's so important to me that people know the exact date, because I want them to enjoy the debate.
It's the 25th. You're right. Whatever it says there is correct.
You betcha. That's going to be a huge one. In fact,
I'm looking forward to that one. That's going to be awesome.
Yeah. So, man, I think that'll be a blast. So hopefully people...
I will say this. When I spoke with him on the phone, he thought I was. He's just like, well, you're being kind of a nice guy, and you're an atheist. I don't know that I believe this. He doesn't might be like, no.
Very
Jake gets death threats. He gets people tapping into his bank accounts. He gets some pretty big haters out there.
And then he gets Nick acting all nice and kind. See, there is some hope up there.
He didn't know what to do with himself. he really, but he was great, and everybody was great on the whole thing, and that's the date.
Awesome. Well, I'll be front row seats for that. So, did you want me to get to the next question, James?
You bet. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. So this, let me see here. Raphael Block, his question, it doesn't specify anybody, but let me see it. He asked, since humans lived 900 years before the flood and 90 after, wasn't eating meat the cause? I suspect that's for you, Matt.
They believe that it was, because they think that there wasn't much to eat besides the animals that were brought on in the ark, the 7 clean versions. That they believe that
7 clean pairs, and I have to correct you on that because it is so rare I get to correct someone who knows more about the Bible than I do. It was 7 clean pairs.
Right. Yeah. So they think that's what the descendants of Noah were eating. The 7 clean pairs of animals. So yeah. But that's what the Noah movie actually with what was his name? The most recent one where the rocks came alive.
Russell Crowe, yeah.
Yeah, the Russell Crowe one. That's what caused the flood, was the evilness towards animals and killing and starting to eat them. But that movie was pretty crazy, like Lord of the Rings.
That was a big one. We appreciate Sidra Fredo Sarabia. Thanks for your super chat. Just fired it in to the live chat. He said, Matt, if Thoth, king of Atlantis, extending 36,000 years, only lived to 50, would this historical account make any difference in the age of man or fairy tale?
Well, you got to take into consideration where that was written and by their mathematical system, kind of like the Sumerians one, using the sexagesimal base 60. You know what I mean? So when you read theirs, you get extremely high age. You know, reigns of kings for 36,000 years and things like that. It's just because their multiplication was very, very different. So I would just say look at their system of what they're talking about, and you'll find a kind of a correlation between the different groups of people, from the Persians to the Chinese and the things like that. They all have nothing past 1,000 years. So it's odd when you see one or two that are thousands and thousands of years. It doesn't add up. So when you investigate it, usually you find out it's their math system that made the mistake. So not really a problem for us.
You got it. Thanks so much.
Oh. Okay, so I got the next question here. Oh, I'm sorry, James.
Nope, go ahead. Sorry about that.
No, that's okay. So next question again from Raphael Block. He says, Adam and Eve had fewer mutations, but with all that incest in the earliest few generations, why no bad mutations? I guess that's for you as well, Matt.
Well, because they wouldn't have been married. Since there's no real mutations, there's nothing inherently degradative, like really, really bad. If there's less mutations, there isn't going to be much to pass on as far as mutation goes. So they've actually found that there's an article called Go Ahead and Kiss Your Cousin, and they found that most very rich and royal families marry their first cousin, and they actually don't have genetic issues at all. Matter of fact, they actually found to have more family members. They actually can, without error whatsoever. It's when you marry direct brother and sister that it becomes a problem, and that law didn't actually come out in the scripture to not marry your brother or your inside your family until about 1,500 years later. So by then we would have assumed that was when it became a genetic issue. So in the original, there's no bad mutations to actually have a problem with that, but they didn't marry direct brother and sister for very, very long after. So they would have been marrying like cousins, like, because they spread out. They were told to reproduce and go throughout the world. And so that's kind of what humans do. We're traveling nomadic. So they wouldn't have had too much problems with that. But yeah, of course, nowadays with the mutational load that we have, you can't do that. But back then it would have been no problem genetically.
Thank you very much. And I'm going to jump back in with you, Standing for Truth. Galaxy, or Godless Galaxy, thanks for your question. We appreciate it. This is for Raw Matt, and it is, do you know that the planes from World War II in Greenland, where they landed, were in ice sheets that seasonally melt? Which wouldn't that disprove your idea of ice cores?
Well, yeah, but if they said seasonally melt, then the planes would have been actually visible. So if they just melted every year that the ice would build up, then the guy looking for the planes wouldn't have had to bore down 130,000 years through ice core layers to find the planes, which is what happened. So if they were melting, think about it. Like, okay, I land a plane, and then it snows on it, and then it melts by the next season, and then the next season comes and melts again. Well, the planes are still sitting there; they'd be visible. So I find that very weird, logically, to say that, well, if they melt every year, then how come they're under ice still? So,
gotcha. Standing for Truth.
Awesome. Okay, it looks like we got Walter White here from Breaking Bad. So thanks for your question, Walter. He asks, this one's for Nick. Looks like it's the last question that I've got, at least. He says, have you read, it's a tough one to say, have you read Kierkegaard or Hegel? I didn't butcher that too bad. And if yes, would you convince Matt that take of Christianity is more fun than the young earth cult, Hegel, lead, Marx, even to communism? That's for you, Nick.
All right. Thank you. I'm going to get the wind talkers on that one. I think I got it. It's been a while since I've read Hegel, and I've never read Kierkegaard. I probably should, especially if he's as much fun as it sounds like. I think Matt Tutt should definitely pick a more fun religion, but frankly, this is going to be the first time I've been in a debate with somebody who's been wearing that, and I have a hard time imagining having a better time. So I'm happy. We'll save that for the next debate. The next debate will be, if you were just picking a religion based solely on how much fun you had, which would it be? And we'll enjoy that one. And he'll have to wear that again, because I have to tell you, I am never going to be on another platform with Matt Tutt over there without him wearing that. That's going to be just part of the requirements from now on. If he doesn't wear it, I'm not coming.
You have to wear that. I agree, actually. Matt, that can be like part of your like persona. You can always wear that.
I guess
That
I'm
was a
honoring
big mistake on it. That's a big mistake on his part. It's
Appreciate that. And last question, Utopia Blaster. We appreciate your question. He asked, or he says, I don't have a question, but would like to thank Nick and Matt for making an otherwise insignificant topic very interesting. So it's really nice of you.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Definitely enjoyed. I enjoyed it as well. This has been. We've never had this topic. I don't think I've actually ever seen this topic at all. Like, this is something that people would.
Nobody wants to debate on this. On my
Right.
side.
Yeah. So this is definitely new and fun. And if you enjoyed it, if you're watching, one of the most direct ways to help other people see this debate, if you think it was fun and worth watching, is to hit that like button. Just give it that engagement. And we appreciate you being here for your questions, for just all of your support. I have to say that all the time, like, this channel is truly like the debaters and the audiences, because the debaters make it happen. We can't thank them enough for choosing to come on to Modern Day Debate. And also, so many good questions come from you and the audience, like, constantly. I feel like pretty much all of them. Like, I'm just shooting out emails, and I love that you guys are so helpful. So thanks for that.